What makes a guitar player great? Since the beginning of recorded history, standout musicians have commanded respect from both critics and admirers. But what is it about these people that's so special? Before proceeding, I want to make one thing abundantly clear. I don't consider myself in this tier of greatest guitar players ever. Not yet. I do, however, know how to recognize all the characteristics and nuances of what makes a guitar player great, as I've spent many years studying with great guitar players, studying the guitar itself, and most importantly, teaching, which reveals all sorts of learning I never would have had otherwise. There's just something about reverse engineering concepts and having to articulate and explain exactly what's going on in a given technique or method that improves your musicianship whether you meant to or not. For example, it's no accident that Guthrie Govan is simultaneously one of the best guitar players in the world and also one of the best teachers in the world. What you'll learn in this video is essentially a primer for some of what I'll be teaching in my virtual guitar camp with Paul Reed Smith this coming August, which you can register for using the link down in the video description. One of the other teachers at this camp is a drummer named Dennis Chambers, and he's going to lay some foundation to help me demonstrate some of the material I'm going to go over in this video.
Dennis Chambers, here we go.
If you don't know who Dennis Chambers is, he's one of the greatest drummers of all time. He's played with James Brown, Parliament Funkadelic, Steely Dan, Carlos Santana, Victor Wooten, John McLaughlin, Greg Howe, Mike Stern, Niacin, Rucker Brothers. So we're going to break down what makes a guitar player great into two primary sections: skills and characteristics, each of which contains multiple subsections. We'll begin with the essential skills of a great guitar player. First, we're going to look at musicianship, specifically the three elements of musicianship: rhythm, harmony, and melody. Rhythm is far and away the most important element of musicianship. Without rhythm, melodies and harmony are ineffective. I mean, we've all seen it before, the shredder who never actually learned to practice with a metronome, blasting through jumbled notes covered by a pool of distortion and delay. Yikes. Paul says it best.
If you are really good at harmony and really good at melody and you're no good at rhythm, you don't work, period. But if you're really good at harmony and rhythm, you'll work. If you're really good at rhythm and melody, you'll work. But if no rhythm, you do not work.
A metronome or some kind of timekeeping device is essential for your rhythmic development. Now, as you could guess, Dennis Chambers actually is a metronome. A great guitar player will never practice exercises without a metronome, and for good reason. The point of any exercise is to improve your technical skills, and if you're already working hard, why wouldn't you want your routine to yield the best results possible? While it's true you either have rhythm or you don't, that can be said for any skill in life. Remember, we're talking about skills of musicians right now. Like any skill, you can work hard at it and develop it and master it. The next element of musicianship is harmony. No, I'm not talking about the guitar harmonies at the end of Hotel California or the vocal harmonies in the beginning of Bohemian Rhapsody. While those are harmonies, we are talking about the broader subject of harmony. Analyzing and understanding chord progressions allows you to adapt to any musical situation, as well as bolstered creativity in your performing and writing. Great guitar players can hear any chord progression and immediately integrate themselves into that musical situation as if they've been playing over those chords for 50 years. Now, of course, it doesn't happen overnight, but it's easier than you think if you get into a routine of practicing harmony that you enjoy. Take this chord progression, for example. It's a simple E minor to A minor to B minor, just leaning on the rhythm and hearing the harmony for what it really is. The last element of musicianship is melody. Here's an analogy for you. A sense of melody is to a musician as a sense of anticipation is to an athlete. Innate instinct and anticipation is what propels an athlete from the high school or collegiate level to the professional level. And so too does a guitar player with strong melodic intuition separate themselves from everybody else. A perfect example would be a melody like this from David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. Without melody, the essence of what connects other musicians and listeners alike is absent. A sense of melody also helps define a guitar player's voice, and unlike harmony and rhythm to an extent, melody is a little bit trickier to hone. You really have to develop your melodic sense by paying homage to melodic greats like David Gilmour and really just experimenting on the guitar. Steve Vai said it best when he said, "Ultimately, you want your playing to be a reflection of what you hear in your head." The next thing we'll cover is technique, and this is where we'll move from essential to non-essential skills. This is an excellent opportunity to impart an exception to the rules I've gone over so far, defining the very subjective term of great guitar player. I'm pretty sure B.B. King could never rip a sweep tapping lick at any point in his career, yet he defined an entire genre. And this is important to understand. He had the essential skills of rhythm, harmony, and melody. The way he used those skills dictated his sound, and it's no more or less valid than a metal player, or funk player, or country player using those same set of skills. Technique is also made up of three key elements: dexterity, stamina, and strength. Particularly on your fretting hand, dexterity is what allows each finger to carry out the action your brain commands. Now, how well that action is executed depends entirely on how nimble your fingers are. If your dexterity needs work, these exercises will be difficult. A great guitar player will constantly be confusing their fingers with various practice routines and exercises to keep their ever dexterous fingers in peak physical condition. The next element of technique is stamina. The amount of energy in your fingers dictates the period of time in which you can successfully perform and sustain a given passage of notes. Stamina can most immediately be measured through playing a particular riff or lick over and over until you fail to play it perfectly. You can expedite your evaluation by playing a somewhat demanding passage as quickly as you can, such as the previous spider exercise. Whatever exercises you choose, building your stamina can be achieved by one thing and one thing alone: repetition. Now, it's important to remember to listen to your body. There's a difference between sore fingertips and aching wrists. The former is usually always present, and the latter is symptomatic of a larger issue. So if you feel your technique slipping, stop, stretch, and pick up your routine a little later in the day or tomorrow. The final element of technique is not more or less important than the previous two. However, it does hold a significant importance in that nothing exists without strength. One can have little to no dexterity and stamina, but still be able to play extremely simple rhythms and melodies and rely completely on finger strength. Consider the late great B.B. King during his final tour. He was nearly 90 years old. His dexterity and stamina had certainly waned, yet the notes he played rang true through the sold-out theater halls. This was completely to do with the strength he still boasted in his legendary fingers. Now we're going to round into the final section of this video, which explains characteristics of a great guitar player. The defining element of any guitar player, great or otherwise, is their tone. Now, as I've mentioned, a great guitar player is not necessarily a technical prodigy. You don't have to possess astounding innate talent to succeed. Miles Davis said, "It's not the notes you play, it's the notes you don't play." Now, while a great guitar player will be proficient enough to deliver a rather challenging or quick passage of notes, the style in which those notes are delivered is not confined to one genre. It's about the way the notes sound. It's about the way they hit the listener's ear. Moreover, the amount of notes in a given lick are equally unimportant. Quality of sound is king. Now, sticking with the theme, we have 3 important elements of tone. And this is in order of importance, so we're going to start with the most important element of tone, intonation. One of the most satisfying moments a guitar player can experience is hitting the perfect bend at the end of a phrase. It's the icing on the cake. Bending is by far the most important guitar technique when it comes to defining your voice on the instrument. And for bending, I like to teach a simple 3-point system. First, you plant. You grip the neck of the guitar firmly with your hand cocked at a 45-degree angle. Next comes the bend. You leverage the string up to the desired pitch by simultaneously pushing the string and opening up your hand to a linear angle. Now keep in mind, when bending the top 3 strings, you should be bending up towards the ceiling. And when you're bending the bottom 3 strings, you should generally pull down toward the ground. The final step in the bending process is the turning of the doorknob. Sustain comes from vibrating a note successfully, and vibrating a note successfully can be achieved by imitating the motion of jiggling a doorknob while you're bending a note. Experiment with this technique to find your most comfortable vibrato style, as everyone's unique. The only thing that matters is the note that you're bending stays perfectly in tune. Second element of tone is finger sensitivity, also called finger tone. This is an extremely subtle yet very critical element of tone, and it involves understanding the nuances of the sound that comes out of your instrument and the way that your fingers and your pick attack can affect that sound. An excellent way to examine your finger sensitivity is to play an electric guitar with no amplifier. This will force you to pay attention to each note in attempts to make it sound as rich and full as possible. If you sound good playing unplugged, just imagine how good you'll sound when you plug in. And the final element of tone is a less important one, but it's worth mentioning: the technical understanding of the gear that you use in the instrument that you're playing. While everything up to this point has been important, a great guitar player also has a firm grasp on the technical side of the guitar's construction. Now, this doesn't mean you have to have the skills of a seasoned audio engineer or luthier, but you should understand what distortion does versus overdrive, and what different types of reverbs are, and what a compressor actually does to your signal. Being able to speak the language of bandmates, sound guys, and guitar techs will put you on a pedestal far removed from the average bedroom guitar player, and more importantly, it'll build perhaps the most valuable asset for those on a quest to become a session musician. So to conclude this video, being a great guitar player involves high standards, dedication, and above all, honesty. You have to be honest with yourself about not only your progress, but your passion to continue and succeed. If you don't put in everything you have into your routine, it's just gonna cheat you. And the worst thing you can do is not give 100% effort. And if you take one thing away from this video, it's that you have to have unrelenting self-examination. So now you know what it takes to achieve your goal, if being a great guitar player is your goal. I'm still working on it, but the good news is the difficult part is already done. Your mind is the only barrier to entry into that inner circle of great guitar players. Your gender doesn't matter, your race doesn't matter, your sexuality doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is your attitude. So if you have a good attitude and you're ready to learn, get after it. And if you'd like, check out the virtual guitar camp, link down in the description, with myself, Paul Reed Smith, Dennis Chambers, Tim Pierce, and a host of other amazing musicians to teach you what you need to know. Thanks so much for watching. Let's have Mr. Dennis Chambers play us out, shall we?